How a massive shipwreck created the world's most powerful mindset. Imagine the year 300 BC. A merchant ship battles a violent, pitch-black storm in the Mediterranean Sea. Zeno of Citium is on board, desperately clutching the railing as he watches his life's work vanish. He was carrying a massive fortune in Phoenician purple dye, the ancient world's most valuable cargo. The waves crash, the hull splinters, and in one horrific moment, everything he owns sinks to the dark bottom of the ocean. He isn't just broke, he is a stranger in a foreign land with nothing but his life. But little did he know, this disaster was the greatest stroke of luck in human history. This is how a shipwreck invented Stoicism. Imagine losing your entire life savings in a single, terrifying afternoon. For Zeno, this wasn't a metaphor or a bad day at the market. Purple dye was the Bitcoin of the ancient world, more valuable than gold or silver, and it was all gone. Most men in his position would have leaped into the waves in total despair, but Zeno managed to crawl onto the shores of Piraeus, the port of Athens, shivering and penniless. He was 30 years old, a failed businessman, and a social nobody. However, the curiosity gap began here: what do you actually do when the world takes everything from you? His answer would eventually define an empire. Wandering aimlessly through the busy streets of Athens, Zeno stumbled into a small, quiet bookshop. Seeking a distraction from his misery, he picked up a copy of Xenophon's Memorabilia, a famous book about the philosopher Socrates. As he read the ancient scrolls, his eyes widened in realization. He encountered a man who valued character over coins and internal wisdom over external wealth. For the first time since the wreck, Zeno felt a spark of hope. He looked at the bookseller and asked the most important question of his life: where can I find men like these? Fate, it seemed, was finally ready to answer his desperate call for guidance. At that very moment, Crates of Thebes, the most famous Cynic philosopher in Athens, happened to walk past the shop. The bookseller pointed and said, "Follow that man." Zeno didn't hesitate for a second. He became Crates' apprentice, but the transition from wealthy merchant to street philosopher was grueling. The Cynics were the punks of ancient philosophy. They lived in the streets, mocked social norms, and rejected all physical comforts. Zeno, a former merchant used to fine robes, was deeply uncomfortable with this radical poverty. He was still holding on to his pride, a heavy burden that the Mediterranean Sea hadn't managed to wash away yet. He needed a lesson in humility. Crates knew Zeno was too self-conscious, so he gave him a humiliating public task. He told Zeno to carry a pot of cheap lentil soup through a crowded marketplace. Embarrassed by the lowliness of the chore, Zeno tried to hide the pot under his cloak to avoid being seen. Seeing this cowardice, Crates smashed the pot with his staff, drenching Zeno in hot, messy soup. As Zeno ran away in shame, Crates shouted, "Why run, my little Phoenician? Nothing terrible has happened to you." Zeno realized then that social embarrassment was merely an opinion, not a fact. This realization changed his entire perspective on what it means to suffer. For the next 20 years, Zeno studied under various masters, Cynics, Megarians, and academics. He was like a psychological sponge, absorbing the best of Greek thought but finding flaws in every established school. The Cynics were too harsh and antisocial, the Epicureans were too focused on avoiding pain. Zeno wanted a middle path, a philosophy for people who lived in the real world, who had jobs, families, and civic responsibilities. He began to synthesize his own ideas, focusing on the concept of living in accordance with nature. He was preparing to finally step out of the shadows of his teachers and lead his own movement on the streets of Athens. Around 300 BC, Zeno began teaching in a public space called the Stoa, or the Painted Porch. Unlike other elite schools that met in private gardens, Zeno taught in the heart of the city where anyone could listen. His followers were initially called Zenonians, but the name, Stoics, named after the porch where they gathered, is what ultimately stuck in history. He didn't want a cult of personality, he wanted a school of logic and resilience. People from all walks of life, from beggars to powerful politicians, gathered to hear this former merchant explain why suffering was actually a hidden opportunity for personal growth and inner strength. The core of Zeno's teaching was deceptively simple: some things are up to us, and some are not. Our wealth, our health, and our reputation can be taken away by a storm or a thief at any time. But our character, our choices, and our internal response are ours alone. He taught that the only true good is virtue, and the only true bad is vice. Everything else, success, failure, life, or death, is indifferent. By focusing only on what we can control, we become invincible to the whims of fortune. This was the birth of Stoicism, the ultimate mental armor for an unpredictable and dangerous world. Zeno's ideas didn't die with him, they exploded across the Mediterranean. Centuries later, Stoicism became the unofficial religion of the Roman Empire. It guided the slave Epictetus through his chains and the emperor Marcus Aurelius through the weight of ruling the known world. It provided a psychological framework for resilience that allowed leaders to remain calm during plagues, wars, and betrayals. When you see a modern CEO or an elite athlete practicing resilience training or cognitive behavioral therapy, they are often just reciting Zeno's lessons from the painted porch without even realizing the shipwreck that started it all. His tragedy became the world's most enduring mental toolkit. Zeno lived his philosophy until his very final breath. He spent decades teaching and lived a life of extreme simplicity, refusing to be corrupted by the fame and respect he eventually acquired from the king of Macedonia. Legend says he lived to be 98 years old. One day, as he was leaving his school, he tripped and broke a toe. In a final act of stoic resolve and consistency, he interpreted this physical accident as a sign from the universe that his time on earth was up. He struck the ground and quoted a line from a play, "I come of my own accord, why then call me," and died shortly after. Why does Zeno's shipwreck matter to us today? Because we are all merchants on a ship that could sink at any moment. Your shipwreck might be a sudden layoff, a painful breakup, or a health crisis. Zeno's life proves that the worst thing that happens to you might actually be the best thing that ever happened to you. If he hadn't lost his cargo, he would have lived a comfortable, forgettable life as a merchant. Instead, his tragedy forced him to find a deeper meaning. He turned his personal catastrophe into a legacy that has lasted for over 2,000 years of human history. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless or having a stiff upper lip. It's about emotional intelligence and clarity. It's about recognizing that while we cannot control the direction of the wind or the height of the waves, we can always control how we set the sails. Zeno taught us that happiness is a good flow of life. This flow comes from aligning our will with reality, rather than fighting fruitlessly against it. When you stop demanding that the world behave exactly how you want it to, you find a peace that no shipwreck can ever take away. It is the most practical tool ever designed. As we look back at the merchant who lost everything only to find himself, we see a universal truth. Perspective is everything. Zeno famously said, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck." This paradox is the heart of the human experience. We grow through resistance, we find strength in our scars. The next time you face a setback, remember the man on the shores of Athens. Ask yourself, is this the end of my story, or is this just the beginning of my internal empire? The choice, as Zeno taught his students under the painted porch, is entirely yours to make. Zeno of Citium showed us that our character is the only thing the world can't take from us. By mastering our minds, we master our lives, turning every disaster into a lesson and every loss into a gain. This ancient wisdom is more relevant today than ever before. If you found value in this story, make sure to like, comment, and follow our channel. And for more deep dives into general education, click on the next long video appearing on your screen now. The journey to wisdom never truly ends, and your next discovery is just one click away.